Attention.
Region Review.
The Raging Cajuns will be a source of pride for this university, for the alumni, fans, and donors as we achieve success in the classroom, in the competitive arena, and in the community.
It's about to get really fun.
We're looking for dudes that will stand up. Well, Coach, let me tell you today, I'm here and I'm ready to stand up. And I challenge you, Raging Cajun Nation, to stand up with us. Stand up with us. Let's lock hand in hand and let's walk through the gates of Omaha.
Hey, I love y'all boys. Let's grind every day starting today. Let's do it. Y'all ready? Alert! Alert! Ready! Who's that team ready? Who's that team ready? That's up!
I got one thing to say right here. Cajuns win!
Ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to the Rage and Review podcast. First time that I've ever gotten to do that, Jerry. That was liberating a little bit.
I mean, it fits your mold. You've done it before in other places, so you are natural at it. You are very natural at it.
I don't know. I guess it's just it's a little bit different than yelling players' names. Now, welcome to the field. It's just, but hey, I had a little butterflies there for a second, but I think we made it. We made it through that okay. Obviously, we're missing one out of our gang of three. Josh has disappeared into the abyss somewhere, and I must defend you, Jerry. We always give you crap for being late, and Josh, it's 8:22 Central. Where you at, ball?
Thank you, because I'm the one with the boomer internet. I'm the one with the boomer technology. I'm the one that's always this and that. And that man is not here. So, but all joking aside, Josh will be here. He's running into a few, technical difficulties himself. It happens, right? We're not always perfect, but he'll be here soon enough.
Yeah, and we have a lot to talk about tonight. Of course, we're going to wrap up our thoughts on the Georgia Southern, not State game, because I did get a little bit of feedback for messing that up one time last week. So we got some Georgia Southern thoughts, and we'll wrap that up and move on, of course, to Florida State, traveling to Tallahassee on Saturday. Early game, 11 a.m. It's been a while since we've played an 11 a.m. game, so that should be interesting. We'll talk a little bit about women's basketball. We'll, of course, wrap up the baseball scrimmage with the team that we played from across the swamp that wears purple and gold that we don't like to mention their actual names. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we'll also welcome a special guest from Tomahawk Nation who will give us a little bit of a preview of Florida State coming up this weekend. Before we get started, I know Josh has a write-up for all of our sponsors, but I don't, so I'm just going to wing it. Want to thank Gordon McKernan, of course, one of our fine sponsors for the pod. Gordon and team just getting it done out in Baton Rouge. I guess maybe the best thing to come out of Baton Rouge for us for a while, but great sponsor of the pod. Also Lafayette Roofing. Thank those guys as well. And I'm sure Josh is going to come on and talk a little bit more about them in a little bit, but wanted to kick off by introducing or mentioning those sponsors. And speaking of introducing, we're going to go ahead and invite our buddy Perry onto the stream. Perry, what's going on, man?
Not much. How are you guys tonight?
We're doing great. We're very excited to have you on the episode this week. Of course, we're going to touch a little bit upon what you guys predict or think about the upcoming game, how your season has gone so far. And I would assume that it's all smiles in your neck of the woods. But first of all, why don't you give us a little bit of info about Tomahawk Nation? Tell us about that in itself, your responsibilities, how you guys got started, and how it's grown over the years.
Well, first off, I'm hyped. You guys have a great intro. I was fascinated, gone. You killed it. If that was your first time doing the intro, then congratulations, because I was ready. I was like, oh man, FSU better lose on Saturday. But so awesome. Yeah, Tomahawk Nation. If you're familiar with Bud Elliott, he's now a 247 CBS Sports analyst. He started it way back in the day when he was in law school. So it has been OG. He managed to integrate it in with SB Nation. He left about 4 years ago. There was another person in between, and then I was lucky enough to start the week before they canceled the NCAA tournament. So it's been like a fun journey since then. Not really football wise. Basketball has been terrible since then too. But Tomahawk is lucky enough that we have, I think, 20 or so freelance contributors, and we get to cover all aspects of the program. And like a lot of the other sites, most of the resources, because they are owned by bigger sites like that, have to focus solely on football. So it's fun to be able to bring that whole like campus experience to it, because there are these athletes who do not get the shine that FSU football gets built in, even when they are terrible. So it has been nice seeing that on the rise. It's been nice like seeing softball be amazing, soccer be great. So overall, it's nice to get paid money to watch sports. So I can never complain. So I'm very grateful for Tomahawk.
And not only that, man, you sometimes, and I know Jerry and I, we've suffered through some pretty bad football seasons. And when you're finally, clicking on all cylinders, things are going your way, man, it makes everything worth it. So I can totally appreciate that being there from the ground up.
And it's nice for Mike Norvell, because like it's very hard to not like sanctify a head coach, even like as a fan, because I'm not going to like pretend that I'm not a fan of Florida State. I went to Florida State. I try to be as non-biased as possible. But even as media, he's like very media friendly. He does a lot to invite. So seeing him have that success is like pretty nice to see, especially because I don't think that you guys are mad at Billy Napier.
Well, we'll get to that later.
We'll get to that there. But like overall, maybe you want him to be successful. Like there's not the spite I think that Florida State fans had for, say, a Jimbo Fisher or even a Willie Tatt, like somebody who left. So it's nice seeing somebody who cares about the sport and the kids find that success without like just stumbling into another like 5-1 season.
Yeah, we'll get into the Napier thing a bit later. We have a lot of different opinions about Billy right now, but let's kind of switch over to the game. We open, or you guys open as a 24-point favorite, and we're on the road, obviously in your house, and the line is kind of moved up and down a little bit, but generally it's about 24 points. Does that spread? I know that's almost like, I think you guys, when you played Georgia Tech, was the last time that the spread was that large. Did it surprise you coming into this game that it was that big? Do you think it should be more? Do you think it should be less? What are your thoughts on the initial spread that's hitting the line right now?
I would say maybe even 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, 24, that's a little bit high. And not even in regards to how the opponent is, but just the way that Florida State has kind of figured it out over the last few weeks. I think it's a 124-22 like scoring margin, like just something like very silly. The opponent quality hasn't quite been there, but just seeing them put that up number of points and hold a opponent out of the end zones touchdown wise 2 weeks in a row, I think just kind of reflects that 24-point spread. Will they cover it? I'm not 100% sure, just because of who Florida State plays next week, especially on a short week, but I wasn't surprised, I guess. Yeah, is a good way to put it.
Yeah, and typically, I'd come into this game. I think at the beginning of the season, we looked at this game as like, okay, we got a potential upset on our hands. We think we can take them on. It'll be a tough battle. It'll be on the road, but I think as you break down the stats, and I'm gonna later on in the episode, we're going to talk and kind of get into the nitty gritty of the stats, but just looking at some of over the course of the last month, you look at Syracuse, they're 18th in total defense. You guys scored 38 on them. Miami is 42nd in total defense. You scored 45 on them. And then Louisville, earlier in the season, you scored 35 on them. They're 38th in defense. And you look at us, and we're 40th in total defense, and we're thinking we're coming in with a little bit of an advantage. And then you allow 6 points in the month of November. So yeah, I think the spread is maybe it's where it should be, maybe 21, but gosh, you guys have just offensively really put on a clinic the last few games. That's been very impressive.
Yeah, and it's not like you guys have not exploded offensively in a few games, especially last week. Like there has been, I think, somewhat of an offensive cohesion that's come alive, I think, on Louisiana's end, which, can I get this out, is it offensive to say Louisiana Lafayette? Like, do you guys only want to be Louisiana?
Yeah, you
Because
just made my ears bleed by saying, first
It's
of all, you
extremely
said,
and I said it very
It's
bad.
offensive.
I said it with the
Offensive.
Florida, like, okay, good. Because I learned, I think we did the team preview in the summer. And I was like, I feel like it's the offensive hyphen. Like, I feel like it's like when like UCF gets mad about Central Florida, I felt like it was the similar energy. So I'm happy I've established that it's not good.
Thank you for that. Thank you for asking. We
No
appreciate
problem. I'm willing to look like an idiot to make sure to not offend. Like,
it. Josh, you're back on. Welcome to the pod, man.
Oh, hey,
Good to have
Josh.
you this episode.
So nice
All
for you
right.
to show up, man.
All right. Look, I'll explain myself after the interview, but let's just keep rolling. It's just Nick, fantastic introduction was fantastic. Interview's going great. Let's just keep rolling.
Thank you. And I'll let you take the next question because I just spilled whiskey all over the board. So you're up.
And that's how we do it over here.
That's
So
beautiful.
you were on thoughts about, so you just actually mentioned about the offensive hyphen, which I love the, I might actually steal that from you. That's fantastic. But you know, Perry, just your thoughts about the Cajun program overall. If you do pay attention to any G5 football, maybe some Sun Belt Conference football, it's gotten so much better over the last 5, 6, 7 years. You know, we're constantly in the top 25 now. We're competitive week in, week out, year in, year out. Things have changed down here. So just your thoughts on the Cajun program, and then maybe the thoughts on Sun Belt Conference football as a whole.
all right, do I get brownie points if I say Louisiana Monroe?
We're going to have to end the interview right here, guys. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, I was gonna say I'm happy we took care of them for you guys a couple years ago. So that was like kind of my introduction to, oh man, like Sun Belt is not that fun to deal with. I lived in Atlanta for a few months, so got to go to a few Georgia State games. Just overall, it's been fun watching G5 having been like fake duped into thinking USF was good in 2007 as like a middle school, like thinking like, oh man, like they're up and coming, and then like kind of like hate watching, like being moderately jealous of UCF during FSU's decline, seeing Appalachian State like help us out, like take care of Jimbo. Like, it's always fun seeing college football be silly and stupid. And like when you remove the like of the ACC, the SEC, like that kind of like, oh, we're taking this way too seriously, and like getting down to like the best part, which is people who love their school and their community, and kids who are just excited to play football and like will do ridiculously talented things, then I just love G5. I can't say that can name players off the top of my head. I will not pretend to be that kind of and offend somebody in the comments be like, oh, he does not know. But I appreciate college football at all levels. I love FCS. I love football wherever it can come. I'm excited to be able to see the first game in the series. I actually, for some reason, thought that it had happened at some point, but seeing that it's the first time it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Jerry, you're going to go next real quick. I just want to get Perry's thoughts on, you know, I don't know if this is your first introduction to the Raging Cajuns. We went down to Florida in 2007 and not 2007, 2012 and almost knocked off Florida. So I'm sure you might remember that if you pay attention to college football at all. So is this the introduction to the Raging Cajun program? Do you have any type of history? Do you remember us for a specific thing or anything like that?
I'm going to like embarrassingly long pause as I try to remember specifics. I know that they have intersected in other sports, and I'm not going to try to like bore you guys and make you stare at a screen as I try to remember. I definitely know it, with a name like Raging Cajun, like that's another thing that I love about football, like Horned Frog, like anything along those lines. If I heard it when I was 12, like it has stuck with me from then on. So seeing how I'm trying not to trigger early, but Napier, like seeing him build that program out, like I always love seeing like a good coach build up a program, like raise a program to prominence. That is mainly my association over the last few years, like just seeing how a team can elevate itself to that level of consistency. Because as if you've paid attention to Florida State, level of consistency in the last like 2 years is going from 5 wins to 7 wins. So there's been a little bit of jealousy at any program that can do whatever anybody's done in the last 5 years.
So Perry, being the fact that this is the first meeting, the Cajuns do go to Doak Campbell Stadium in Tallahassee. And, personally, I've had the chance growing up in New Orleans to actually go to a few Sugar Bowls when the Seminoles have played in there growing up. Got to see Warwick Dunn, Peter Warwick, Chris Winkie, a few of the legends, right? I was there when y'all won that national title in 99. So I know the support's there. Florida State, you guys have a very hardcore fan base. Seminole Nation is really, they show up and show out. But over the last few years, like you said, there's been some inconsistencies. And I know there's been a few years where Doak Campbell's had some attendance issues. But as of late, now with the excitement of what Mike Norvell's been able to do, kind of bring the program back to that sort of dominance that you're used to. Talk a little bit about the atmosphere on what you expect this weekend, especially over the last 3 weeks with those wins. What can we expect as far as an intimidation factor? Do the Cajuns have to prepare for noise this weekend? Talk a little bit about Doak Campbell, and is that Tomahawk chop going to be going all game? What can we expect?
Oh, you can expect to get annoyed, because even Florida State fans, I think by the third quarter, you see the half out, oh God, my arm is tired. So by the third, even just normal tackle that they play it, you guys will be okay, maybe mute it and we'll put some music on. So,
I actually remember that in the Sugar Bowl. I just remember as a kid, it's every second or third play, you would hear the do 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 do. Whoa! And
it's modern college football players, how they celebrate a tackle even after a 3-yard gain. It's the equivalent. If something happens in a football game and it is somewhat positive, you're gonna hear it just go off.
So even some of your own fans are just come on, guys. Okay, my voice is wearing out.
Nobody will say it, but I mean, and it is fun. It's fun, especially when you're winning. It's fun to do. It's just the equivalent of anytime you can say something without having to form words, especially in the third quarter and the drunk is kicking in. That's just all pluses all around. A noon game, it's maybe not going to be as terrifying as a night game when you've had all day for those people to be in the parking lot, but I think it is going to be a pretty decent crowd, just given that next week is against Florida. It's a Friday game, expensive, inconvenient for people to go to if they want to attend a Florida State home game. This is their last chance. It's not going to be vile. They're not mean people for the most part. You will find a terrible Florida State fan, especially on Twitter. So don't be aware of the hashtags you use, because they're very good at searching. But overall, it's going to be a pretty nice environment. I'm not sure if it's senior day. They haven't said anything about it. I don't know if they're saving that for Florida. There's been a superstition about it since 2012 about making it the Florida game. So just overall, it will be a fun time. If you're going, it will be very annoying to find parking. It will be, I think, nice weather, but overall, good environment, nice rowdy-ish crowd, 85% full, I would say, at max. So it will be a good time.
Looking forward to it. I checked the weather today, and supposedly high of 60, low of 47, mostly sunny for the majority of the day. So I don't think weather's going to be an issue. And I checked it because I didn't know what kind of weather was coming off the Atlantic for you guys. I don't want to get stuck in another storm. I'm not leaving Louisiana to go get stuck in a hurricane. So I think we're going to be okay weather-wise. But it's good to hear that Doak Campbell's back bumping again.
Oh, you're not the first.
Whoa.
Who is that?
This has never happened before.
I'm scared it's me.
Uh-oh. We'll edit it. Don't worry about it. There you go.
Okay. There's a name alert. There's a name alert somewhere. And you're not the first to say Doak Walker on our podcast. I think we've had only one guest not say Doak Walker, because it's just
it's ingrained
muscle memory. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm excited. When we go on the road, I like to go to real college football stadiums, experience that buzz, the big time college football experience. I mean, that's why you travel. That's why I travel. So that's going to be exciting. Let's kind of look back, Perry, at the schedule, because there was a game early in the season that we were particularly interested in. You guys walked away with a 1-point victory over that school across the basin, I was a huge Florida State fan that night. I would think that Nick and Jerry were as well. A lot of guys in Lafayette were. We were rooting hard for you guys. Because of that win, that makes this game even more important for us, and we'll go into that later. But that's a big win for your program, especially early on, especially for Norvell. Sorry, struggling here, man. Duquesne doesn't count, so we won't say that started your season. You had a tough loss at home to the Demon Deacons, who turned out to be a pretty quality program. They can score the ball. They've really improved over the last 3 years. So I think that Florida State was probably trying to find their footing at that time. You lose the following week to a very gritty North Carolina State team. Obviously, I still think they're in the top 25. So, I mean, that's a tough loss, but at the same time, you can justify it a bit, right? You come back home and you give Clemson all they want, but ultimately can't hold it. I know that there was some funny business at the end of that game. I watched it. That's a tough loss. You get on a roll a little bit. You crush a bad Georgia Tech team. Miami, I know another rivalry in the state of Florida. You just embarrass them, which I love watching Miami suck. I have no tie whatsoever. I just think it's fantastic. If I had to take if I had my druthers, it'd be Florida and Florida State that were relevant in the state. So Miami can get lost. I have zero love for Miami.
I appreciate the peace brokering that's going on.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Here.
I mean, that's honesty. But then you go out and you rout a really respectable Syracuse team. And I know they were kind of banged up, but regardless, the core of that team is good. They've been, again, one of those teams under Babers that have just continued to get better over the last 3, 4, 5 years. That's a hell of a win because you dominated them. So you don't just walk away with a victory. You walk away with, an outright rout. So I know that Florida State fans are feeling good, right? Just give me a quick synopsis of kind of looking in the rearview mirror, looking at the ups and downs kind of the season for where you are. And how do you feel as a fan, considering that, the Cajuns come to town and then you have Florida. You're being talked about in, I know the bowl projections are out and I see where people are. And it's hard as a fan not to look ahead and wonder what could be. So just kind of like your, little bit of a revitalization of the program. The ACC is what it is, but you're starting to climb the ranks again. I know that that middle of the season was tough, but overall, you got to feel pretty good.
I think the realistic fan who, if you were realistic before the season, 7 wins was going to be okay, things are in the right direction. So your realistic fan is stoked, excited at this point. They're like, all right, 7 wins, maybe 9 if things go correctly, 10 if you win the bowl, which is 3 game, or I think the over under for the season was 6.5. So already past that, Vegas odds passed. The maybe more spoiled 90s Florida State or 2013 Florida State fan, that just came around right at the end of Jimbo is that NC State game should have been a win. Wake Forest isn't even that good. So I think he's ahead of schedule. I think Norvell's ahead of schedule considering what we expected this season, considering how Florida State has looked in the wins. It was disappointing that against the only ranked competition, I cut myself off. The team, that school across the bay?
Across the basin. Pretty good, though.
Across the basin. Okay, the school across the basin they were not ranked. They're doing their thing. They're not that impressive, right? When Florida State beat them, they were. When Florida State beat them, they were amazing when they won. Sure. When FSU won, amazing. Now, they're terrible. But
I'm impressed.
They were.
Impressed. Josh, I'm impressed with
this guy's got a head on him. I like him.
I like him. Yeah.
My mom taught me how to flatter. But that's so against ranked teams, you did not win. Syracuse was maybe going to be ranked, but they kind of fell apart injury-wise. And so if you want to even qualify the last 3 games, Miami was not up to full health, missing their starting quarterback. They just have looked god-awful this year. Georgia Tech offensive line is just decimated. They're playing maybe, I think, 2 walk-ons, 1 walk-on. I might be wrong on that, but they're just bad. So Florida State has dominated bad teams, which is good, and that's a great sign, especially when last year they lost to I blocked it out mentally. Jacksonville State.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
I was actually going to bring that up.
Yeah. So that's when you see that happen last year, and when you only win 3 games in 2020 is a gas leak year. Nobody knows what happens. None of that counts anyways. But still, the improvement there to start off 4-0, to be able to be at this point 7-3, especially when losing all that momentum against the good teams, middle stretch, when you could have easily just crumbled at that point, to just absolutely whoop on arrival when they're beginning of the season, they were very excited. They're like, we are up and coming. We can pay any player $5 million. And then that happens. Like, people are feeling good, but there's like the little bit of like, oh man, I got my new MacBook, but I forgot to get the $100 Apple Card, like that you forgot. Like, there's just like that little bit of like, oh man, I should have. But I think anybody who is realistic should just be excited. 7-3, like bowl eligibility locked up. They look good. I think they look like a top 15 team. I don't think they are, but they look good. So like that, after watching them just, and yeah, we can get into Jacksonville State soon. I can paint all day. So
I'm hopping in here a little bit late because I had a power surge, and that's where you heard the beeping from, and then all hell broke loose in my house. But we're good now. I am back. So I'm not aware of the questions that were already asked. Apologize if I'm asking a question that's already been touched, but curious. I know Florida is a huge they're the rival for you guys. So talk to me a little bit about your perception of Napier. I know it's easy to hate a program. What are your guys' feelings, general thoughts on Napier? You know, he built the program here. Now he's at Florida. Is it an automatic hatred because he coaches for the Gators, or do you guys have a little bit of respect for him coming in?
Yeah, no, it's game over. As soon as you're there, like they're just mean. So don't even look at like what people are going to be saying about it. Don't search his name that week. You'll be offended, even if you're kind of like a little like miffed at him, like over what happened or like how things have turned out. You'll be offended on behalf of him.
Perry, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
So first of all, Rage and Review broke the news like a month before any legit outlet broke it. So we got like 1,500 followers in a week, and they loved us. Oh man, the Raging Cajuns are our new favorite team. These guys are amazing because what we did is we said, look, we know Napier was never going to stay here long term. If we got to give him off, this is the way to do it. We're gonna support the guy. He did a great deal for our program. The best we could do, and the thing that he deserved from us, how we felt at the time, was that we would support him on the way out. Well, when he left, he took way more than he said he was going to take. So we, of course, defended our program and said, hey man, you kind of crushed us on the way out. Thanks a lot. And man, the Florida fan base just turned on us overnight. And we got hate mail. We look, it was ugly for a while. We had to start blocking folks.
Even on my personal account, man, because like, and we hosted a space. I wasn't a part of this pod at the time, but you guys hosted a space and there were like 1,000 listeners. And it was just like we were trying to have a pod to say we're pissed off the way things happen. And all you heard were these idiots from Florida, and not all of them, but there were a lot that came on and were just complete a-holes to us. And it's like, this ain't for you. Like, why are you here? This ain't for you. But I think going back and Josh kind of touched on it a little bit, and you asked what we thought of Napier. The thing is, I think there was a lot riding on Napier's decision to go to Florida, and a lot of input that he had on our head coach hire, right? Local guy, ties to the program, former quarterback. We all love Coach Des. Coach Des has never been a head coach in FBS football. And so we were led to believe that this hire was being made because nothing's changing. Yeah, a couple of coaches are going to go, maybe a couple of support staff, but the culture, we want the culture to continue. That was the word on the street, was that's what Napier did. He pushed for this guy to be hired because we want to continue the culture. And then 2 weeks down the road, he looks around and says, holy crap, nobody wants to coach with me at Florida. So we're just going to take the entire Sun Belt Conference coaching staff and support staff down to the video guy and the guy who gave calf massages after games to Florida, and leaving us with nothing. You got a head coach who's never coached before, now having to build an entire staff.
They even took the touchdown baton with them. Like the touchdown baton they danced with, that was our touchdown baton. But really what happened was, to Nick's point, I think a lot of people saw when Billy went to the bowl game that Florida played in against UCF, and UCF dominated that game, especially in the second half. And look, let's be honest. Even you as a Florida State fan, you're not expected to lose to UCF. You just don't do that in that state, right? It would be like the school to the east of the basin losing to us. It just doesn't happen. I think when Billy saw that up close, it's easy to sell you $7 million and the whole house, right? But when actually the house has leaks the house has damage, the house has asbestos, and you don't see it when you're being sold, the mind changes. And I think that's what happened. He realized, like, oh my gosh, I have a lot more work to do than I thought. So he took over 20 staff members with him.
Well, the two best
right after
players
that.
came from Louisiana.
Yeah, I know.
Montreal
And
Johnson
then-
Jr. is their best running back, and literally the best offensive lineman in the entire nation
in the country.
came from here. So
Our
he's
guy.
not any player.
Did you see him the other week say
He's
that he
ridiculous.
left you guys in a really good place and did not take anybody?
Well, that's a total lie. He knows what he
Yeah,
did. He
that's what
said it. He said in an interview that he would have taken more if he would have known what he was getting himself into. They illegally recruited our players. Do we want to go down that rabbit hole? Probably not. Let's stick to the interview.
That's what I mean. That's what we're just like building bridges here. It's going to be very sad Saturday if things play out how they should. But overall, I'm happy about this establishment. We're good. Miami sucks. The school across the basin.
Yes.
Garbage.
Trash.
All agreement. Okay.
I like where this is headed.
Yeah.
Um,
We're all, yeah.
Nick, actually, no, Jerry, you're up. Sorry about that.
So we were talking about the Gators, but let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Florida State. Jordan Travis, great quarterback, pretty much the whole package. Davey O'Brien candidate. Your wide receiver room, very well improved. The passing game for the Noles has been outstanding all season long. Your front seven, probably one of the most dangerous in America, especially your defensive line. I mean, they are just violent across the board, and they haven't been giving up too many points over the last few weeks. You have a great first-round talent in Jared Verse. Remember him the first week in the Superdome, outstanding. We're very familiar with the Seminoles team. Who are some unsung heroes? Who are some guys behind the scenes that we may hear of on Saturday that maybe not getting that recognition, but we know they're going to be making plays against the Cajuns?
So Pat Payton, I'll start off with him. He's been coming alive lately, and he is actually, unless I am mistaken, Louisiana native. So he maybe will know a couple of players. It'll be nice to see him like compete against either teammate. I am going off the top of the head here. I don't know if he has teammates or competition that he played against, but whenever there's that kind of connection, it's nice to see. He has been great on the line. Defensively, Tatum Bethune, linebacker, transfer from UCF, has been a huge difference maker in making that unit like go from below average, one of the worst in the ACC, to like realistically above average. Like pretty good, like decent enough to make the defense functional. Along with Kalen DeLoach, also a really good linebacker. Jamie Robinson, all ACC safety. He should be an NFL pick as well. On the offense, you name your running back. Like that is like something Florida State is like very thankfully like rich at. Trey Benson, Oregon transfer, who is recovering from like pretty much tearing up his entire leg, has been just phenomenal this year. Trayshawn Ward, coming back from a collarbone, hasn't really gotten any action, but he is really good as well as Lawrence Toafili, who is kind of like one of your like weeble wobble, but they don't fall down backs, like just like gets hit, keeps going. Trey Benson, same way. Ward is more of the speed back. They really have done such a good job of building up this team through the portal without like, I'll get another shot in, without rating Memphis. Like that was one thing that Norvell did not do when he came in. He did not take Brady White and like everybody who was on that team. He has gone and identified like kind of like cast-offs from other schools. It did not work last year with Mackenzie Milton trying to like fix him, but with a lot of these players, Johnny Wilson, Micah Pittman at wide receiver, they did not have that much production at the school before. So across the board, there's a lot of like fun players. Like they have finally established that kind of identity that he likes. And then just like a fun offensive lineman, Dylan Gibbons, who just a really good guy. He was one of the first like NIL athletes to use like GoFundMe. So he has a GoFundMe NIL partnership and just does so much community work. And it's been really awesome. When they played in New Orleans, he like went with his friend Timothy, who's in a wheelchair, and like donated books to the hospital there. So just, it's been nice to build a team that isn't full of like really annoying guys. Like it's nice to kind of like, of the Jimbo Fisher era. So across the board, you got to be satisfied.
It's very interesting. I agree with you on the Jimbo thing. Not the best roster. If Florida State is susceptible to a letdown somewhere along the line against the Cajuns, I tend to think that if a team is unprepared or a team comes in maybe a little bit lackadaisical, typically you can find that very first inkling on special teams. Because, special teams is like rebounding, right? It's effort. Most special teams is all effort. So I'm going to be looking at that first. But if you had to identify somewhere where the Cajuns may have an opportunity to maybe exploit Florida State when they're down or not focused or whatever the case may be, where do you think that might be?
Turnover margin has kind of improved, but Florida State has been very lucky in holding teams out of the end zone. Like Miami got a fumble off Jordan Travis, Syracuse got a fumble off Jordan Travis, and both times Florida State was either able to manage to hold them to a field goal or just completely off the board. So if you take out the last 3 weeks of football where Florida State has just looked untouchable, you see a team that struggles in short yardage and in the red zone. Like they put up the yards, they can move the ball very efficiently, but they were not scoring. And they got very lucky to play 3 straight bad offenses. Now, is that like built them up and built the confidence and let them figure out what they need to do? Or did they forget what can happen if they forget that they actually need to score points on these drives? So Louisiana's defense actually is good. Like they are not FCS. Like there's not like Florida State fans, thankfully, are like pretty aware of like not taking competition lightly. They have seen what has happened from near losses to actual losses. So there's not like some like pew, like there's like cannot overlook these guys. So like it is very like very serious old man. Like you can't they got to play the game. So there is that chance if Louisiana can get that turnover, can score those points, and then make sure to get the points when they can, which sounds like obvious. Like you got to score more points than the other team. But one thing that I am personally jealous of is y'all's kicker, because seeing like that amount of production and points, like since he took over, has been like Ryan Fitzgerald, Florida State's kicker, struggled like really terribly earlier in the year. It kind of played into that NC State loss because they were not playing for the field goal. They were playing for the touchdown. So if Louisiana gets that turnover, like they are very capable, rack those 3 points up, rack those 3 points up, rack those 3 points up. Like you want to score touchdowns if you want to score the upset. But in this situation, if you can get those points and you can just figure out how to take away the run game or the pass game or one aspect, because one has to feed into the other. And that's what has allowed FSU to be good these last 3 games. But that not happening is what you saw over that 3-game lose streak, because 7 or 16 points, something like that against NC State. Like they did not put up most of that. That Clemson game was actually maybe garbage time. Technically, they could have blown Florida State out if they had put the foot on the gas a little bit more. Wake Forest kind of did whatever it wanted. We've seen teams take advantage, so there is that possibility. But 3 games in a row is just hard. Like it's just hard to like wrap your mind around like suddenly reverting back to the mean. I think that there's a decent chance that in the second quarter, like late, third quarter early, you're like, should they be ranked? Like there's going to be like that. There's the very high chance of that, like kind of like, oh no, it might get silly right now. Like the whole ESPN is going to be ready to be like, in 2 straight weeks, Florida State lost to Louisiana and its former head coach. Like, so there's all of that like possible.
You've already got the storylines played out, man. I like that.
There's a lot of trauma, so don't worry. Like it's very possible.
Trust me, we totally understand the trauma. We have an actual disease called Cajun disaster syndrome, so we know all about it. Before we ask our last question and let you get out of here, I've been wanting to ask this question to an actual Florida State fan. Speaking of the red zone, like you said earlier, when Mike Norvell or whoever your offensive coordinator is decided to call a toss to the fullback on 4th and 1 at the goal line, what did that do to you as a fan of college football? Because I can tell you, I was in a rage, and it's not even my team.
That the worst part is that is the only game this season that I wasn't able to watch like from start to finish. My other job is I run social media for like amateur IndyCar. So we're at a race that weekend. So I'm sitting there on my phone like, oh, they got the ball. They're in the goal line. They're gonna score. Okay, game over. And then I just see fumble. And then I had to do the game cast because like my illegal stream, my ESPN official stream was not working. So I was sitting there freaking out. I see they score, and then I just see that there's no extra point. So it was just terrifying. I think Norvell does get a little bit too cute sometimes. He has a little bit too much trust in his athletes, which like there are worse problems to have because you would expect on 4th and 1 to maybe just be able to pitch it. He walks in because that play was there a few times. Like they ran counter, I think 70% of the plays against Miami. Like they just, if they want to bully, like they can just really be annoying. So I get the thought process the same way I get the thought process on throwing on 2nd down with 16 seconds left, like in scoring position against NC State when like maybe just set up. Like you can probably go for the field goal and still win, but the way that it's panned out this year, he's gotten the benefit of the doubt. Like there's still like a little bit of the like, hey, like you need to figure it out on like 3rd and 6. Like there's a little bit too much stalling. If you look in the middle 8, the like college football's favorite stat this year, then there's like a lot of like questionable, like long non-scoring streaks. It sputters at times, so when it hits, like it hits. It's very nice.
So final thoughts before we wrap things up. Your opinion on how the game is going to unfold on Saturday and your prediction for a final score.
If we go like realistic, like let's pretend like we're running this through like the college football simulator. Florida State should like be able to take care of business. Maybe not cover, but I think like at least a 17-point win just based off what they've been able to do over the last weeks, how healthy they've gotten, where they've struggled over the offensive line, defensive line. Like they've kind of like figured things out. I don't think it's like 5 minutes into the game, it's 17-0 and then playing catch up the rest of the game. I think it's like Louisiana scores 3, Florida State scores 7, maybe they get 10, 10-6, 17-6, like something like just the steady, like small climb, and eventually like it just makes the difference, and then it ends up looking farther than it should have. Crazy case, then they just like continue like their ridiculous, unsustainable pace of not letting a team score a touchdown or any points at all, and then like they just keep going, which like it could happen. We've seen it, like they have it, but I just don't think, given that they, not to say overlook, but like maybe are holding things back in anticipation of the next week and like not wanting to put too much on film or anything like that ahead of like a really big game against Florida. It could be closer than it should, but I maybe am in denial of the possibility. I acknowledge that there is the chance that it could happen, but just because of the fact that it looks like Louisiana, kind of in the same time frame, has just figured out its offense, but has had the defense the whole time, is what worries me. Like the defense presence and the ability to convert that into points is what Florida State has not had to deal with since playing Clemson. And that's actually where things can get like crazy and sticky in college football-y.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's a fair assessment. I will say, I wanted to mention this before I asked you that question, was I appreciate you saying that the fans understand that it's not a gimme, because, and you were pointing to a couple of other games. I mean, you look at the Sun Belt Conference that we're in this season, and you consider Old Dominion, beat Nebraska on the road. We beat Marshall. Marshall goes out and upsets Notre Dame. App State goes out and upsets Texas A&M. And ruins their season. So I appreciate that you guys have a savvy enough fan base to just not automatically look past us, and give a little respect there. Final thought for me. And I think we're going to throw up a question from, let's see, Andrew. We all want to know, man, first time in Tallahassee, what bars, what places to eat at? Where do we have to hit up while we're there?
Okay. If you want to see Tallahassee and its most Tallahassee and like the college like Chaos College Town, which is like the most hilarious, like generic name, like you're going to Disney, but it's called College Town, Madison Social Township. The club is called Recess. Like it's very like hubbub, like almost like Nashville, like a lot of like going on there. Good brewery, Proof, like great beer, chicken fingers. Is Cane's like an actual delicacy, or is that like a fake like myth, like how people love In-N-Out? Because I've had it and it was good, but I don't know if it's like the regional. But if you really like want good chicken fingers, there's this place Chubby's, which is just top notch. If you want like gross, like good hibachi, this place, Mr. Rubato's, it is on the food report list. So like,
Say no more. If it's called Mr. Rubato's, I'm in.
Right, I'm in.
Buyer beware. It is definitely on the health reports. But like, I ate that place constant. There's a Publix that has Chinese food, and that is like top notch as well. But bar wise, you walk around, like there's a lot. Do not go to the Strip unless you want to really see like college. Like that is like straight like 20-year-old like EDM. I walked in there I'm 28 now. I walked in there at 25 and I was like, I need to go to sleep. Like it's a lot. So like
we had a Strip in Lafayette at one time, and that was kind of the same thing.
It's been condemned. So
yeah,
that's what, like, it should have been condemned. There was black mold in it, like literally at one point. So you walk anywhere down the street, you'll find a party. Like the tailgating atmosphere is going to be great. The after party will be nice because it is a noon game. Like you'll be able to stay alive after the fact. Florida State fans are nice.
What if we win? Like, are they nice?
They're just depressed. I could have garnet and gold glasses, but like I haven't seen Florida State fans antagonize like anybody, like even after a loss, like instigate. Like I haven't seen fighting. Miami fans, scariest people on earth. Doesn't matter the outcome of the game or the sport.
Well, we know about that. I mean, they put that on full display several times.
They're just terrible, terrifying people. Florida fans are like snooty, and they'll be like, well, at least like we have good job. Like they're like the elite school. So like that's like it. But like NC State fans throw pee. They're mean. They're scary. Clemson fans are nice. But like Florida State fans, if you're walking around, you're like, hey, it's our first time in Tallahassee. We're here to enjoy the game. Like we just want to see what's going. Like they'll join you at the tailgate. Very nice people. If you see an annoying one, then just like add to the list. There's very like Twitter. Like I said, don't go there. Don't go like
every fan base has a sect of it.
Yeah. When you see Florida State like get like that first like holding call, like when it's 3rd and like 16 and they get the first, or 3rd and 13 or something, and they get the first down, and like you're just like, that was a pretty questionable call. You're gonna get like 5 replies real quick, but they're not gonna Florida fan you. Don't worry. Like they will not Gators you.
Good to know. Gary from Tomahawk Nation. I'll tell you what, you say your last name so I don't butcher it, and then let everybody know where they can find your work and follow you just in general.
That is the most exciting part of every podcast interview that I do. So I'm happy that it came at the end. Kostidakis, Greek name. I know that you guys have to deal with very long French names like a lot. So
you have no idea.
Yes.
I will absolutely go out of my way and pronounce it. Perry Kostidakis, thank you guys for having me on. You can go to tomahawknation.com. SB Nation website. We cover Florida State football, basketball, which is absolutely terrible. Just lost to Troy, but Troy was good. Like that's what like they definitely. Dude, like
Scott Cross is the real deal. You didn't lose to a scrub. They are good.
No.
He's a great coach.
They were good, but they lost to Stetson and UCF too, 0-3. So not good. You maybe don't want to read the basketball coverage unless you do like looking at people's misery, which I do. I look at good bull hunting a lot.
Hey, they call us the Fun Belt for a reason, baby.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Like Fun Belt is just the epitome of like Maction and Fun Belt are just what college football is meant to be. Like AAC just wants, like, they're just tryhards. Like they're trying to get in the country club they bought polo at the outlet. They're like, oh, we belong. So like people who accept that college football is silly and should be silly and fun, like that's what I love. So the beauty of it. So thank you guys for having me on. You don't want to follow me on Twitter. I'm very boring at Perry Cost. You can look like Tomahawk Nation. It's just our news. We appreciate just even the invite, especially like win a game like this with the first ever series. You guys are excited to go, which is, I'm sure, a conflicting feeling because you're like, I can't wait for the game. Like, so excited to talk about it with you guys. And I'm happy that we could have taken care of business for you guys in the beginning of the season. And hopefully we can once again return the favor next week.
Absolutely. You've given us a very unique opportunity on Saturday. I think we can all
Or the
agree.
week after, excuse me.
Yeah, I think we can all agree, go to hell, Florida, right? I mean, we can all agree there. And look, we appreciate you taking the time to join the Rage and Review podcast, the fan-to-fan interaction, or excuse me, the fan podcast to the fan site interaction is kind of what we built ourselves on. So anytime we can have these conversations, we really welcome them and we appreciate it. So I would say good luck on Saturday, but I would be lying to you. I will be there. My wife and I are going up to enjoy the game. Hopefully we'll run into each other. I'll send you a message if you have some time and we'll kick it.
Well, I'm stuck in Tampa this week because because I actually commute back and forth, but I appreciate it. I would love to in the future, if we get another one going, I'll maybe out of spite because my fiance is a Florida grad. When you guys play Florida eventually, then I'll go and be able to put on my Raging Cajun shirt and be able to fully enjoy the experience. Go to Canopy Road for breakfast if you can on Sunday and get the cinnamon roll pancake. And that's all. Like, as long as you enjoy it, that's all I need. That's the reward for me. If Florida State loses, at least you guys are happy. That's the only way that I can ever comfort myself during like the big upset losses. At least somebody is having a good time.
I like your style. We look forward to seeing you in a Raging Cajun shirt. Perry, take care, man. It was a good time.
I appreciate it, guys.
Yes, sir. Well, Nick, that was really good. Like last minute kick ass.
And then I destroyed the board in the meantime, by the way, by spilling whiskey on it. So that's going to be a tomorrow issue.
So,
oh my.
Let me explain myself. So first of all, I walked into an update, which I don't even know how that happened. I certainly didn't commission it. But anyway, we had a thing. First of all, we're supposed to have our last soccer game tonight. It was going to be at 6 to 7. I was going to be home at 7:30. I had everything laid out. I was prepared. You guys had the notes in your inbox. It was ready to rock and roll. Well, that didn't work out. So the other team canceled because forfeited. Let me fix it. They forfeited because it was cold. All my girls were ready. They were rocked up. Let's go. They were bundled up, ready to kick some ass.
Wait, because it was cold?
Thank you. And then the coach didn't send us a message until like 4:30.
You put some shawls on and you go out there.
Don't get me started. So anyway, the parents decided we'll turn this into a, like a last dinner team thing. So we go to Pizza Village, right? Shout out Pizza Village. Get there, order our beers. We have our pizza. Girls are having a great time. Next thing you know, I'm looking down, waiting for the bill. Things are taking too long. I still got home on time. I was ready to rock. Oh, by the way, I got this cool little thing. Check it out.
Nice.
Rainbow mermaids in the house. Nice. So anyway, we got it all taken care of. I'm home, 8:13. Sit down. Freaking software update on the computer screen. So I was locked out for like 9 minutes.
Well, at least you didn't destroy a $700 piece of equipment that I'm hoping will last, and I'm hoping when it dries off, it will function.
If you bought it new, I'm sure. Did you go Sweetwater route?
Well, yes, but to be fair, it actually, I'm trying to sound cooler than it was. The whiskey's on this side. I had a bottle of water and the cap wasn't on, and I just knocked it over.
You mean to tell me that I'm the one with the good technology tonight?
So
no,
Jerry,
we're not.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Better. My broken mixer is better than your technology.
I don't know, man. When you spill too much whiskey, it may kind of shaws it a little bit. I think I might have the better technology for the night.
All those weeks
I'm taking this. I am
noise.
taking this win.
Yes.
Give me this W for just tonight. I'm taking this as a W.
And Jerry's internet connection has been fantastic throughout.
I know, right?
He plugged it in. That's why we've been telling him for 8 months. Plug it in, Jerry. He's like, well, where does it go? In plug. You just plug it in. Good job, Jerry. We're proud of you.
Seriously,
you, tonight,
you held
man.
the show together, man.
Hey, I'm at least for tonight. I'm taking this small victory. Okay, just let me have it for this night.
This does not bode well for the Tallahassee trip. Nick's going to be running the board.
That doesn't
Shit's
work.
blowing up.
Well, let's hope it doesn't reflect on the field, right? Let's hope it's only here.
I know we got to roll into our reactions to the interview, and I got to tell you, I have so many thoughts. And by the way, Perry was fantastic. Tomahawk Nation actually has a ridiculous following, so he was very humble about the amount of work they put in and everything they've been able to accomplish as far as a following. I mean, really impressive. I looked at all of their information. They do a great job following their teams and covering their teams and everything. It was really great. I want to also say thanks to Gordon McKernan and the team. They gave us some tickets this past week to give away to get the, hashtag Pack Cajun Field. They did their part. They showed up to watch the game. So shout out to them. I just had to say that. Also, Darren Domingue he called it, I'm on a win high, but it was more like I'm on a whiskey high to me because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't read. And he was complaining about the RV lot. So I told him we would do a segment on the RV lot, which turned into an RP thread. So I kind of came through on that, but we are going to save all of the fix the stuff inside the stadium, fix the tailgating thing. We've got like a series coming on that, Darren. So Darren, Lafayette Roofing, fantastic business partner with us. Wanted to say thank you for that. If you guys need anything at all, anything, installation of anything at all, painting, you name it. They're general contractors as well, so they'll be waiting for your phone call. Lafayette Roofing, great sponsor of Raging Cajun Athletics and longtime RCAF member. I got so many thoughts. I'm going to start with this because I didn't really want to roll into it with Perry because I don't want the interview to go 2 hours, but this is a team that has the same core that lost to Jacksonville State, and he mentioned it. And I don't necessarily think that they weren't talented enough to beat Jacksonville State. Obviously, they were. They recruit 3, 4, 5-star athletes in their sleep. A team loses to a team like Jacksonville State when they're not focused, when they're not prepared, and when they don't take the game seriously. I know they've improved, but look at what they've done over the last month. We talked about it. They beat a good Syracuse team. I'll give them that. But do you think Syracuse has the athletes to play with Florida State when Florida State feels like they're threatened, especially at home? I don't think they do. It's Syracuse, New York. And I know they've been better under Dino Babers, but it's still Syracuse, man. I'm sorry. They've got some nice wins in the last few years, but still Syracuse. Who did they crush right before that? Georgia
Miami.
Tech, bad. Miami, hapless, lost to Middle Tennessee State and got their tails whipped. I know that they feel like they're on a roll, and you can't really argue with the offensive statistics, and honestly, their defense has been absurd too. But some of that is complementary. It goes hand in hand. They've got some tough losses on the schedule, and they've lost to some teams that play pretty comparable defense to what we do. And I honestly think that we have been hurt by our offense, and some of those defensive numbers that are maybe in like the high 40s, low 30s would have been helped by a competent offense. And honestly, a couple of times with the special teams really not showing up. I will continue to say that this defense is better than they've showed. They're as good as we think they are. I think when they've been given the opportunity to do their job the way they're supposed to do it, they've been absolutely outrageous. If the team that showed up against Jacksonville State shows up against the Cajuns, distracted because of Florida next week, distracted because of senior night, distracted because they think they're doing a great job by blowing out mediocre to bad teams. I know a lot of people look at the stats on paper and they look at what our schedule looks like compared to theirs. I'm sorry, dude. There's a reason why you play the game. We're not a scrub team. Have we underachieved? Absolutely. Have we shown flashes? Absolutely. It's college football. Anything can happen. What do y'all think?
Well, I think that's why you play the game. I mean, you don't know what is going on either team right now. I mean, there could be an outbreak of the flu in Florida State and half their starters are out. I mean, you don't know that again, that's why you don't crown them before you play the game. Now, will I say I am more concerned about the offensive production and defensive production they've had over the last couple of games? Yes. I mean, I don't care who you're playing. If you hold two teams to 3 points in the month of November, that scares me because they're not scrubs either. Now, are they world beaters? No. Syracuse and Miami don't scare. They're not world beaters. But again, you hold two teams to 3 points in the month of November. That worries me a little bit. So I don't know that the matchup is great. I mean, we're going to talk stats in a little bit. Some of their stats are stupid. I mean, they have like a 64% conversion rate on fourth down and almost 50% on third down. So keys to the game, which we'll talk about in a bit, are limiting them on third down. But we did that against Georgia Southern this week. I mean, you look at Georgia Southern, when they came in, you're thinking offensive powerhouse. They're gonna sling it and they're gonna run on us, and it's gonna be a tough go. And we came out and pretty much dominated. And again, I don't want to say that I think we're gonna come out and it'll be a win for us. I just don't know. It depends, again, as inconsistent as we've been all season, who shows up to the game. Like you said, Josh, if we play to the potential that we have to play, or that we can play at, I think we make a game of it. If we come out against them like we did ULM and go up 17 and then put it on cruise control and say, oh, well, good luck. That's it. We got our 17. Then it's going to be a long game.
I think in spite of, Syracuse may not be a dominant team, or Miami's not playing, or they're not the old Miami that we knew growing up, Florida State still went on the road to both places and only gave up 3 points. Their ACC opponents, they were both road games, and again, they only gave up 3 points. That's scary to me. I think for us, the biggest flaw that we've had all season is inconsistency. Inconsistency on offense, sometimes inconsistency on defense, inconsistency on special teams. Some of the decision-making through the coaching staff is kind of made us raise eyebrows. This is one of those weekends where we cannot be inconsistent, because I think in spite of the competition that Florida State has played over the last 3 weeks, they're still hitting a lot of momentum. In spite of the fact that those 3 schools they're not as good as maybe what we think perception wise, there's still 3 ACC schools that have been dominated by Florida State, just their defense and not being able to score. I think for us, and like you guys said about playing the game, I think if our team goes in with a mindset of nothing to lose, that's where I think we play our best football. I saw it against Troy. I saw it against South Alabama. I saw it against Marshall. I felt our team went in knowing that we are capable of winning, but in the 2 out of those 3 games, we just couldn't finish. I think this team will give Florida State a good game early on. The main thing is, again, what has always affected us is our own mistakes. Can't make mistakes against Florida State. So as far as the expectation and as far as what's at stake here, I think for us, we just have to play smart and we just have to play discipline. You do that and you let the chips fall where they fall. And I mean, let's be honest, Florida State, naturally, they're a more talented team. They're a little bit of a better team right now, but that doesn't mean we just go there and collect a paycheck and take a beating. I think we're good enough to compete with them. We just have to limit the mistakes.
I think the fact that we've been inconsistent, not necessarily just bad, helps us. We don't need to be consistent against Florida State. We need to hit a home run. We need to catch lightning in a bottle. That's all we got to do. And I think that we're easily talented enough to do that. You mix in a couple of mistakes and some lack of focus, you got yourself a football game. I understand that they held Miami to 3 points. Kevin Stockstill's Middle Tennessee average defense held them to like 6 in the first half when they played them. I have a hard time looking at what they put on paper to this point and telling myself I don't have an opportunity to win this game. I just watched this team. You want to talk about momentum. Now, look, I know we lost to Troy. But if you want to talk about the last 2 quarters of Southern Miss, the first 3 quarters of Troy, and then the entire game against Georgia Southern, I feel like we're playing some pretty damn good football. Did we collapse? Nah, I hate using the word collapse, but did we not come through and finish the game in the 4th quarter against Troy? Yes, that is inexcusable. Was it helped by some really terrible officiating and some bad play calling? It was. I mean, let's be honest. But just play on the field. Give me another 3-game stretch where the offensive line has looked as good as it's looked. I can't find it. I think we continue to improve week in and week out. And I think Jax is going to be back this week. I think the offensive line as a whole is working better together as a unit. That's encouraging to me. The wide receiver room, I think we're starting to find the guys we can rely on. If Jacob Bernard is not your number 2 wide receiver at this point, what are we even doing? I mean, the guy just goes out and makes plays. He's a reliable weapon at this point. He's also a great wide blocker. If you look at the improvement of the run game, a lot of that's predicated on our wide blockers actually getting nasty lately. If you watch some of the replays of that game, especially Peter, and I got to shout him out because I've been a little bit tough on him, but he's been blocking well and playing hard. Made a couple of nice catches in that Georgia Southern game. So I don't know. On paper, sure, we look like we're totally overmatched. Now, I will tell you this. I'm not insane. I understand their front seven is, like Jerry said, one of the top in America. They've probably got at least one NFL first-round draft pick, probably 2 or 3 more second or third rounders. Fast, huge, physical, athletic. They're going to be good. It's going to be a monumental task for this offensive line to even keep them at bay, much less, win at the point of attack, win one-on-one. There's several matchups, unit to unit, where we don't look like we can win. That offensive defensive line thing is going to be an issue. And if we can't keep Jared Verse in, check, we don't have a chance because he can continue. He's like the kid from LSU, number 40, who took over the game. I can't remember. Harris, I think maybe. He took over that Arkansas game. Verse can do the same thing for Florida State. Again, watch special teams. If special teams comes out and hits Florida State in the mouth early, you know that we're focused and ready to play, and Florida State is not. It's an effort game on special teams. I mean, I think you guys would agree with that. It's like I said, it's like rebounding. People that get out-rebounded, they don't want it. It's an effort game at that point. So those are my thoughts. If you guys look at the turnover margin, we've been good this year. Florida State has struggled in the turnover margin. I was glad Perry that brought that up. I think that's an opportunity to win. That's an opportunity to exploit a weakness that maybe they haven't dealt with because they're blowing teams out. The other thing is that when you blow teams out, you don't really have to be in the mix. You get to sit people, and your starters don't have to play meaningful minutes. We can't do that. We've got to be all hands on deck all the time. I think that plays in our hands, especially if we're more healthy than we have been. So anyway, moving on. I got to ask this question because it's been a topic of conversation. How much does it mean to you guys, right? If we go out and beat Florida State, and yes, it's possible, folks. We go out and beat Florida State in the same season that they beat the school across the basin. How big of a deal is that? For you, Jerry, or for you, Nick, or maybe for just Joe Everyday Fan. Does that change the way you look at this season? Does this season have a different complexion if you can go on the road and win a game like that? Let's remember, we're not too far removed from the Cajuns getting absolutely dominated every time we step foot out of conference and played a ranked team. I mean, how many times did we even play close? Illinois once, Arizona once under HUD, Florida under HUD. Outside of that, South Carolina, they weren't ranked. They were SEC under Bustle. I mean, we were happy to play Tech close back in the day. We're not a decade removed from getting totally trounced every single time we walked out of conference. So I can tell you from my personal standpoint, going on the road and thinking that we have a chance to win is already a massive upgrade in being a fan of the Cajun football program. And then secondly, having to listen to their incessant bitching about how much better they are and little brother and blah, blah, blah. If we go beat Florida State on the road in the same season that they lost to them, that's a big deal for me. You guys.
I could care less about LSU and what they think of it, honestly, because no matter what you say, Josh, it's going to be some other, well, how many national championships do you have? Or how many this do you have? Or you whatever, dude. I care less about what LSU thinks. I mean, it is great to have in your back pocket just to throw out there when they try to, just puff their chest out. But for me, it's not only meaningful because, like you said, now we're in it. We're in the game before we get there, and we're not automatically chalking it up as a loss. I think the fact that we have a chance to go in there and upset them is huge. But I think for me, more than anything, it's one that we get us bowl eligible. To me, that is the number one goal. So that I would be excited about that. Number two, I'd be excited, obviously, going on the road, beating an ACC team. That would be awesome. But number three, it really to me, it helps springboard not only us into next season, but also recruiting. I mean, how much time will we get on ESPN showing, Louisiana beats Florida State, and how many blog posts will be out there, and how many Twitter tweets and whatever? Like, it'll be all over the place. To me, that is the more valuable thing out of all of this, is that our recruits will see it. Our players will feel good about themselves. They could go in and maybe get a 7-win season. And then going into next year, it really helps us out. So for me, that's bigger than LSU. Again, no matter what we do, we could go out and make, if we had made a New Year's Six Bowl this year, LSU would still come up with something. Well, you didn't win the Natty in 19, and you didn't do this, and you didn't do that. So it doesn't matter what we do. We could win the national championship of the universe of the world, and they would still find a way to come back and say how much better than us they are. So that doesn't matter to me.
Jared, real quick. I'm not familiar with those 3 letters. I'm not familiar at all. I don't know what you're talking about. But the other thing is that the reason why I'm setting up the narrative is because I already know the narrative is going to be, well, Florida State does it again. Florida State, oh, they're not back. So my narrative already, like my fallback narrative, is going to be, well, so what? We beat the same team. Even if we don't, I don't know. Even if we have 2 straight losses after this game, at least I can rest and say, well, you know what? We beat a team that beat the all-knowing, almighty, powerful school across the basin. Go ahead, Jerry. Sorry.
No, it's like Nick said, though. Like, I remember 10, 15 years ago, their fans used to talk trash to us saying, we'll win games. We started winning games. We'll win games that mean something. We started winning games that meant something. We'll win a natty. So it's kind of like every time we do something that the trash talk requires us to do, it gets higher and higher, right? So at that point, I kind of ignore it. Don't get me wrong. I would think it's pretty funny if we found a way to beat Florida State and they didn't. We could, honestly, that would just trigger people. It would just trigger a few of their fans, and they would find a way, little brother, blah, 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 blah,
No, we get the name game thing again. Well, they call them, they're not losing.
Yeah, if you want to do, honestly, it would be funny to do it just to get a reaction, because we'll get a reaction out of it. Some of the stuff we've tweeted in the past, we've done it just to get a reaction, and they take the bait every time. But I think it would be bigger for us to win this game because, first of all, again, we get bowl eligible. Secondly, I think it'll salvage a lot of shortcomings that we've had this year, like losing to Southern Miss, losing to ULM. I think that'll it would kind of ease the pain of that a little bit, ease the pain of some of the disappointments we've experienced. And also too, you have a pathway to, if you win this game, you're 6-5, you have a pathway to beating Texas State. You win that game, you're 7-5, and you guarantee a winning season. So I think that would be huge. But beating Florida State, it also helps with recruiting. You can use that in the offseason. You can go and really, you joke about if we were to beat a team that the school across the basin lost to, you can use that for recruiting. Be like, hey, look, come to our school. We beat a team that they couldn't beat. That would be huge. So I think there are some factors into this game outside of just the fan trash talk. I think this type of win could push us forward, even in spite of the so-called prognosticators talking about, wow, Florida State lost another disappointing game. Oh, here we go. Jacksonville State part 2. Doesn't matter, because right now Florida State's hot. Right now they're playing good football. Right now they're back in the top 25. Right now Mike Norvell has them going in the right direction. If anything, I think that would kind of seal it would seal a certain perception to Dez, to show that he can beat the big school, to show that maybe to the naysayers, maybe he is qualified for this job in the long run. So I think those are the type of factors that go into this weekend. If we were to beat Florida State, I think that would be huge for us. I think it would give us momentum that we might have lost losing some of these close games going into the offseason as well. Just have to go on Saturday, play the game, and see where the chips fall. But if we win, it would be huge.
But I want to say, Josh, I don't think the narrative would be, oh, look, it's Florida State again. I think our conference mates have made it almost an expectation that Sunbelt teams are going to give a Power 5 team a run for their money. So I think that the narrative would be, here comes the Fun Belt again, rather than, oh, look how crappy Florida State is. I think that would be the narrative. But beat them and let's see what happens.
That's a good point. No, it's a fair point. I think it's like Rick Jones said, if we ever want to elevate the fan base to where we need to be, we got to stop looking at tech, and we got to stop looking at ULM and all these other schools. People need to understand that our rival is that school across the basin. And I think that it's games like this that give us that opportunity to be able to have call it bragging rights, call it whatever you want. I think that there's a segment of our population, fan base wise, like me, that understand that if we are going to take the step, we got to win these games. And you got to have a bit of that ammunition to be able to use. And here's the other thing. And look, some of it's petty, and I'm in for the petty stuff. What's fun about college football if not for the pettiness? But the other thing is that regardless, beating Florida State on the road would be one of the biggest wins in program history. Even still, even after all of our success over the last few years, even after a Sun Belt Conference championship at home, even after all the stuff, the Iowa State wins, everything, that would still be a top 10 win in program history, maybe top 5. I mean, I think they're 23 in the playoff ranking and 20 in the AP poll, Jerry. Am I right about that?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, from a historical program standpoint,
Sure.
It would be our biggest win. I mean, the team's got 2 national titles in the last 25 years. You know, you had Bobby Bowden coach there. You've had Heisman Trophy winners. Even with the win against Texas A&M in '96, Florida State, I think, has a richer history than Texas A&M, even at that time. And of course, no offense to Iowa State, but they definitely have more tradition than Iowa State. I mean, Florida State, in spite of some of their shortcomings over the last couple of years, it's still a big name program. People know who they are. People know their traditions. People know about their history. Perception wise, to me, this would be the biggest win in our program's history. I mean, you beat a team like that. That's something that we'll never forget.
That's very interesting. Nick, you agree? Biggest win in program history?
Maybe. I mean, definitely top 5. I would say top 5. I don't know. I think because of their history, like you said, Jerry, but to me, when you look at the fact that when we went on the road to Iowa State, that was a program defining win. To me, that's number 1. Only because we had never done anything like that before. To me, this is like a 2 or 3 because now we're upholding that we can go on the road and do it. So I wouldn't say the biggest, but I would say it's up there.
Well, no, I'm talking about from a perception standpoint. Program, right. As far as beating a team with a program history, they've got it would be I would say it would be a win against the richest program, like a team with the richest program history would be Florida State. I think our biggest win was Iowa State. I mean, look, that Iowa State team was a runner-up for the Big 12. They won the Fiesta Bowl the year we beat them. They came within a game of making the college football playoff. But I think as far as perception of beating a big-time program, by far this would be the biggest win. And Florida State has so much history to it.
I think we're framing it all a different way. I think, first of all, our best win in history is against A&M because it was at home and it put us on the map. You know, and by the way, we had a legendary quarterback at the helm. So I think because of all those things, because of staying power and memory and all those things, I think A&M still is number 1. I think Iowa State's number 2 because it came in a season where we were extremely successful. We did something after the win. So I would put that number 2. You go beat Florida State this season. I think it's probably 3 or 4, honestly. I'd have to put some thought into that. I really didn't, but it's still, I think we can all agree it's a top 5 win. I think it's a top 5 win.
Easily.
On the road, top 25, Florida
Absolutely.
State. Yeah. Well, good. So that's something to think about. I really hadn't put that much thought into it.
And look, I think there is not one person in our locker room, and more than any other season, that doesn't think that they can go and win at Florida State. There's not one person that is not expecting to go and win at Florida State. So to me, that gives me a little boost and saying, look, we might get our butts kicked, but we're going in there and I feel like we have a chance. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Just got to get the execution.
If we execute, who knows what can happen? I mean, we've been executing lately and starting to pick up. So you never know. They're going to go in there and give it their best shot. And that's I know that's going to happen. Seems like Mike's teams play their best when they need it the most. And that's something that's kind of been a trend. So, speaking of giving it your best, women's basketball loses to the number 3 ranked team in the country, the Texas Longhorns, a few days ago. Gave it all they had. I think with 10 minutes left in the game, we were down by 10. Or 8 minutes left in the game, down by 10. So, the women went out and put on a good show. They gave a gritty effort. They end up falling to Texas. I think they end up losing by 16 or so, but made it a game throughout. They are in Lubbock tonight and unfortunately lost to the Colorado Buffaloes 73-43. Colorado just kind of overwhelmed them in the first half and a couple of big runs offensively. let Colorado run away from them. That is the women's NIT, preseason NIT. And, that's really a prestigious event to be a part of. So it's good on us. It's good representation of the university. Amazing that they thought that much of us to invite us to that event. I don't know how good Colorado is going to be. I know that we got a great win against Houston, and we talked about that. That Texas game, in the long run, will help us out.
And look, the biggest thing in that game was we couldn't hit free throws. Like that was, and not only that, but they had this one player that's like 6'4", and she was just a monster. But you hit those free throws, and instead of being like 48% or whatever we were, you go 75, 80%. It's much more interesting game going into the fourth period. So kudos to the girls. They did a great job, and I think it's going to be a fun season going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, you played a team close like that for most of the game. The problem is Texas is still the number 3 team in the country. Teams in the top 10 are going to know how to finish, and teams like ours, they need to find ways to get over that hump. And that's where the challenge lies. And that's the difference between someone who's number 3 and someone who's not. I definitely commend Coach Broadhead for facing those type of challenges, even tonight against Colorado. Look, this is the same Colorado team we faced in the WNIT Cup a couple years ago and came up short. So, it's nice to be able to play some familiar teams like that. It's nice to see that, these tournaments look up to us to actually invite us to these tournaments. So that just goes to show you the perception of what some of these tournaments and some of these other teams think of us. So I'll take that. I think it's only going to help us get better as the season goes on. I know we probably have some easy games coming up down the stretch, kind of boost our record a little bit before conference, but no, I think they're off to a decent start. Obviously, you're not going to win against the best all the time. Just want to be competitive, stay injury-free, get better as the season goes on because it's still early.
Agree. And the women NIT, the preseason women NIT is going to continue tomorrow, and women are going to play Jackson State, favored to win the SWAC, 4:30 in Lubbock. That'll be another interesting matchup. It's going to be a team that's not a pushover. Again, they're in the NIT for a reason. So that'll be something to keep your eye on. The women will come back home to the Cajun Dome November the 20th, that's Sunday, to take on Texas Tech. Another Big 12 opponent, an opponent that, they've been kind of down lately, but they have tradition in that program. And look, regardless of what you think, they have the branding of Texas Tech. They're going to bring a good squad into the Cajun Dome. It's a really good home game for the fans. Something to look forward to if you're a women's basketball fan or supporter or whatever. Gary just goes out and makes good schedules. I mean, what can you say? We complain about schedules a lot here, but Gary does it about as good as anybody else does. What do you think, Jerry?
Let's see. We've had Auburn come to the Cajun Dome. We had the school across the basin come to the Cajun Dome. We've had Mississippi State come to the Cajun Dome. We opened the season up with Houston this year in the Cajun Dome. I mean, I don't know how you can get much better than that at that point for non-conference competition.
It's not a secret why they've been competitive year in and year out, and they're getting better as a program. When you play things like how many times did Tony say it? Iron sharpens iron. I want to see what I can do early in the season so that I can be tournament ready when it comes time for March.
But what does it say about Gary and what he's been able to do to bring in those type of teams to the Cajun Dome? Obviously, the other, those coaches have enough respect for him in our program for them to make the trip down here and travel. I mean, that's expenses, that's time, that's gas money, that's class time for the girls on these other teams. And for them to actually come here and want to play us here, especially from conferences like the SEC and the Big 12, that says a lot. Oh, and I forgot to add, I believe Texas Tech has made a trip down here as well. That's, to me, I mean, you can't ask
the trip on Sunday.
You can't ask for much more than that. Yeah, you got Texas Tech coming here on Sunday. You can't ask much. You can't ask much more than that.
Jerry,
I don't.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Relationships. I mean, Kim Mulkey, after we played them, she was just raving about Gary and his program and his coaching and how good of a person he is. So that translates, right, in the coaching world, and those relationships are what matters when it comes to scheduling. Because you got to get creative and you got to have those relationships with those coaches to make it happen. So I think that's important and huge.
And she said in that post-game press conference, she said somebody had asked her, are you willing to play them more often? Would you make a return trip to the Cajun Dome? And what did she say? As long as they give us a return trip to the PMAC.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you
yeah.
might have a
Every
series
year.
that just started up. So
Exactly.
that says a lot about, like you said, relationships mean a lot. Again, when you attract SEC and Big 12 schools to come to your place, that goes to show you, obviously, there is enough respect for our program. There's enough respect for the coaches to be able to have these conversations and are willing to negotiate deals. I think that's great. Anytime you have a Texas Tech, a Houston, an Auburn, a Mississippi State, I'll say it out of respect for Coach Mulkey and LSU. That's respect right there. So I'll take that all day. I mean, you can't ask for much better than that for a non-conference home game.
And the fact that they want us to return the trip goes a long way. They want to continue the relationship. That goes a long way. Relationships. How long have we been talking about it? But I digress. Anyway, again, Texas Tech, November the 20th. That's this coming Sunday. They're calling it the Thanksgiving game. Sunday Fun Day Thanksgiving game in the Cajun Dome, 4 p.m. Should be fun. Tamara Johnson continues to lead the team in points per game at 15. She also leads the team in rebounds per game at just under 10. So she's doing work down low. Go out, see the women play some good quality basketball against some good quality opponents. Volleyball took one on the chin this past week against App State, who, by the way, has won 11 out of 12 and are absolutely smoking hot right now. The Cajuns went up and won 1 set out of 7. Really tough. I mean, look, you go to Boone. Maybe it was the the elevation. Elevation really got him there. I don't know. Who knows? No, I'm kidding. That's a basketball joke. But the girls went out. They ran into a buzzsaw. Okay, so they got kind of dominated a little bit there. Unfortunate way to end the season. They will be in Foley, Alabama for the Sun Belt Conference Championships that start Thursday, November the 17th. They will play App State, 7:30 p.m. on that Thursday. Good luck to the girls. I think they have the opportunity to win. Obviously, didn't have the showing you wanted to against App State and Boone, but this is you got to get rid of it. Burn the tape, start over, go make a run. We know you guys can do it. We'll be rooting for you and watching on the Plus. It is available on the Plus, by the way. Anyway, I've been getting a lot of requests to talk about baseball. I know the game didn't count, and I sent out a tweet that said, game doesn't count, duck season starts, Saints are playing, it's cold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we still had 35 to 4,000 people. And, I don't want to turn this into an attendance thing, so we'll just talk about baseball. But the Teague was packed to see some good quality baseball. You can bring your own beer in there. I guess that helps. But the concessions were open. It was fun to be at the park. That school across the basin obviously has a ton of talent on the mound, in the field, at the plate. They obviously are going to be a problem in the SEC again this year. Jay Johnson he's not a scrub. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing. He will abuse arms, but he knows how to find talent.
I was about to say, you beat me to it, man.
He does know how to find talent. I mean, look, he just does. Say what you want about how he abuses players. It's just true. He knows how to find players. Anyway, it was a fun environment. It was a fun. I just love being at the tee. It doesn't matter. Anytime you can be at the tee, I'll go watch, travel ball over there. I don't care. But it was fun. We didn't go out. It wasn't a traditional game, obviously. People got on the staff for giving up a bunch of runs, and I think they gave up 7 in the first game. Am I right on that? 7-2. So they start with Preacher, Jake Hammond, and I've been told by a couple guys on the team that he's developed a third pitch that he relies on. I'm not real sure what it is. It looks like a split change. It's kind of a hybrid. Very interesting pitch.
We'll call it a Shaw's ball.
A Shaw's ball. Go with it. Which was effective, but one thing that I figured with Jake is that in that second inning, a few things let him down, but still got to locate. You still got to locate. And he, a few things kind of, they resurfaced from the end of last year. I doubt that they're going to try to put him in a starter role, so I don't think we have to worry about that. But if he can locate and he has command of 3 good pitches, like he showed, he's going to be a problem for 6 to 9 outs. First of all, I love him in the reliever role. I don't know why you would try to move him unless it's absolutely necessary. I don't think it's necessary. But it was interesting to see him come out first. Then you saw Blake Marshall, who hasn't seen live pitching or live hitting in almost 2 years. He gives you the power lefty. Oh, by the way, speaking of a power lefty, Hogan Harris made the 40-man roster for the Athletics today. So shout out to the Harris family. And Hogan, definitely a major league talent, so we're rooting for him and we'll be watching. But anyway, Blake Marshall gives you the power lefty that you haven't had probably since Hogan. He's got dominating stuff. He throws a cut that just dives into the right-handed batter. He'll probably live 92 to 93 once he's fully healthy and loose. I think that is a huge weapon. I'm interested to see what he's going to do. Obviously, you guys know I'm a big fan of Blake. And then you got Moody coming in. You got Juhas coming in. You got all these guys that are fighting for innings, and who knows what they're going to look like. Tommy Ray looks like he's put on about 15 pounds. He looks big and strong. I just need to see him attack hitters. I've always thought that Tommy had good stuff. You know, like in some outings, he had unhittable stuff where his ball was just diving out of the zone. You can't be scared to attack hitters. Not at this level. You got to go get people. You can't be scared to leave your stuff over the plate. We have a couple of guys that have really good stuff. Blake McGee, great example. Elite spin rate. Scared to throw strikes. And there's no shot at Blake. You know, welcome to the program. I don't want to be rude. I think that once these guys get rid of that worry about giving up a hit, just go attack hitters. This pitching staff has talent. It's going to be on Seth to go out and piece it together. He did it last year, and we didn't give him enough credit. I personally didn't give enough credit for what he was able to do late in the season, especially in tournament play. They found what worked. They found a winning formula with guys that were not traditional starters. So Seth did a great job. If he can replicate that and figure out who fits where and find roles for guys, this team is going to be good, because I'm telling you right now, we're going to hit the baseball. It's very obvious.
And let's not forget that when he was at Nichols, that was his pedigree. I mean, they had one of the top pitching staffs in the country for a couple of years. So I have trust in Seth that he's going to get it done. Tib knows what he's doing. He's just got to get his guys in there. He's got to get his process in place, which I think he's, a year under his belt. He's getting there. So as long as we have run support and we give the pitchers the ability to, as you said, attack the zone, I think we're going to be in good shape next season. Now, if we start this thing where we're struggling at the plate, we're pressing, we're trying too hard, then I think, any pitching staff will not have confidence to throw it in the zone. But again, if you go up a couple runs early in the game and you got pitchers attacking, it's going to that's what you need. That's exactly what we need, because from what I've seen, especially against Tulane, we're going to swing it, right? So we just need a little bit of pitching support to back us up there, and it could be a special season for us.
It's like I've said since the beginning, we're going to score runs. Pretty much almost the entire lineup is back. You saw that Deg style of baseball towards the end of last year into the regional, to the point of where we literally went toe-to-toe with Texas A&M. All we need is a pitching staff that can show some consistency and really just finalize a weekend rotation. Once we do that and solidify some consistency there with a few guys, a few good arms in the bullpen, maybe find one or two midweek guys that can show some consistency as well, the bats are there. You do that, we're going to win some games, and it's going to be a very fun year. I'm so fired up about this season. I'm so fired up to see what these bats can do. I think that Deg's style, gritty baseball is here to stay. Really all we need is just a good weekend rotation. I know a lot of times in the past we've started out the season with a weekend rotation that has changed, and it's evolved as the season went on or over the year. But this time around, we do have some decent arms. We did get a lot of new guys, but to your point, Tibbs going to have to work with them and be able to put them in the right position and where they need to be. I think once he does that, the bats are going to take care of itself, and I think it's going to be a fun year. I'm looking at this team, knock on wood, barring any injuries, I'm looking at another regional appearance. That's what I see. I mean, we just have too much talent to come up short. And I think it's perfect timing with those 4 teams coming into the Sun Belt and the way our non-conference schedule plays out. I think it's perfect timing to actually win the games we're supposed to win, go toe-to-toe with teams that will give us a run for our money, just enough to where our RPI can be high enough to get us or solidify a spot in a regional, even in spite of winning the conference tournament. So, again, pitching and defense, getting the timely hit, those are Robe's 3 keys. I think if we do that, we'll be fine.
Look, I'm driving to Louisiana because I live in Texas. I'm driving to Louisiana, getting on my little Caesars app, and betting for the Cajuns to be in a super regional. That is my pick.
Why
I'm
the hell
calling
are y'all
it
talking
now.
like that?
I'm calling it now. It's
I do
gonna
not
happen.
condone. I do not endorse.
Yeah.
I do
dude.
not. I don't stand for
Super
any of this.
Regional.
That man
We're
just
making
hexed
it,
us.
baby.
I hope you didn't hex us just now, Nick. I'm gonna remember this
Bruh.
if it backfires.
Where's the
If
Rage
you-
and Review disclaimer that y'all
If
used to make me say all the
you
time?
think I can make a difference in the path of this team? Okay, I got some oceanfront property in Shawsville to sell you.
Usually we
go
have to
do
do
a-
a disclaimer
a
for
dance.
Man About Town. We got to do the Man About Town disclaimer. We're gonna have to pass that on to Nick.
I know. I got to remember it. I haven't used it in so long. I've been being good.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, I like. So anyway, defensively, I think we're gonna hit the baseball just fine. Look, Julian Brock looks he looks every bit the All-American catcher we thought we were getting back. I think I've said it before. I think Hoodie is poised to have like a Caleb Adams type season. I think Max moving to second base is going to be very interesting, but it gives us a lot of range on the right side, especially with all the damn shifting that Deggs does. Anyway, of course, I love Rock and center. I am interested to see who's going to win the first base role. Because if Connor Higgs is not going to be a DH, he's very competent at first base. We haven't had a real corner bat at first base since Compton. Honestly, it's been a long time. So is it going to be Connor? Is it going to be Mason Zombo, who I like a whole lot? Every time the guy comes up to the plate, whether it be in a scrimmage or an inter squad, he hits the ball to the fence every single time. He makes great contact. He doesn't strike out a whole lot for a big guy. I'm interested to see how first base is going to shake out. And then also the other corner, you got John Taylor, who I like a whole lot. I think he's a gritty dude. His glove is ridiculous. If he can hit with consistency, I think it's his job. And then you have Peyton Lejeune, they actually said Lejeune during the game at PA. So I don't know if the PA guy got it right. I guess I'll just go with Lejeune. Anyway, obviously he was a coveted recruit out of LSUE. Deggs wanted him here. Who knows what was said? He's going to get every opportunity to win that job. I haven't seen a ton out of him. But again, it's practice. It's games that don't count. So I'm gonna reserve judgment. I'm just telling you personally, just by watching a little bit on the field, I really, really like John Taylor. I really like his attitude.
And I like our defense. I think we're going to be upgraded on our defense this season for various reasons. But I like what I've seen. I've liked what I've heard. I might have an inside connection to the team that might have told me some things that he likes as well. So
really,
I like what I see. But back to the Lejeune thing. Look, I would not be surprised if my brother had a hand in that, because he told me at the beginning of the season, hey, by the way, it's Blake Trahan. I'm like, okay, Blake Trahan. And I announced it for like 3 games. And then I find out, I'm like, are you kidding me? So, and that was a joke he had between he and Blake. So my brother probably got the tuna.
He probably did. So if we went around the parishes, if you're from St. Landry Parish, it's Lejeune. And if you're from
Lafayette, it's a Lejeune. Come on, man.
Lejeune. I mean, they insert, it's like, what is it? LeComte? That's LeCount. That makes absolutely no sense. We just make stuff up just so we can tell other people they're wrong. I think that's what happens.
Well,
but we're going with
last
Lejeune
name,
for now.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
You have to put the right emphasis on the right syllable. Then you got it all good.
All in all, and Debo's better, by the way. Debo looks, he looks great. Anytime it's 2 outs, if Debo comes to the plate, you can bet your ass he's on base. He's getting a hit. He's getting hit by a pitch. He's walking. Debo's, I can't wait to see what this guy does this year.
It's crazy because he was already outstanding last year. So I can only imagine what better looks like for him.
I'm you know how I am. I'm very, I'm careful with what I say about baseball, especially the last 5-6 years. I'm excited to see what these guys can do against real competition.
Oh, me too. Me too, man.
You know what I think?
I like what we got. Yeah, I know. We don't want to hear it again, Nick.
Nah, that quiet.
Anyway, baseball was fun. LSU's got some players. Oh, that school across the basin's got some players. I think they're going to be a problem in the SEC. They're probably going to be a top 10, top 12 type team for this coming season, I like what they have. They got a lot of seniority coming back. Also, if they find a couple of guys on Friday, Saturday, they're going to be really
Well.
really good.
And the thing is, Jay Johnson went into the portal. I mean, he dug into the portal deep with some really good talent. I mean, this is a year where they're going to shine, I think. But again, that's great competition for us. You know, I look at baseball and softball differently when we play them because I mean, look, we benefit playing them. And they benefit playing us, regardless of what their fans think. And, oh, no, you're a little brother, this stuff. No. Would you rather play us or would you rather play some rink-a-dink, midweek game against some team with an RPI in the 300s? So,
like Tech.
We benefit each other. I think we
Look,
benefit each other in the Diamond Sports there. So
I've got nothing bad to say about their baseball fans. They're knowledgeable. They know the game. Now, not all 10,000 fans that go to their game, probably about 5,000 of those know the game. The others are just there to take selfies and post on TikTok.
I'll say this.
It's like Jerry always says, when you start from home plate, the further you get away from home plate, the dumber the fan gets.
Exactly.
Let me tell you, look, every time we've gone to a game at the box when the Cajuns played there, we usually sit in the main grandstand area, and we always end up in having good conversations with their fans.
Yeah.
They're knowledgeable. They actually have, believe it or not, have respect for our program. We compliment each other. We talk about what they have, what we have. But the further you go out towards the outfield, it's a little bit different conversation than it is close to home plate.
And don't even think about sitting in the outfield.
Yeah,
You won't last
I'm
2
good.
innings.
Right,
No.
right.
No.
All right, so those were my thoughts on baseball. Shout out to Mr. Ray for talking to the podcast about talking baseball. Of course, I was going to talk baseball anytime I can. I'm definitely bringing it up. It was a lot of fun to be out there this past weekend. So, got something on the rundown that I didn't tell the boys about. I'm going to bring in a mercenary to do the job for us because we've kind of taken a stance on this particular issue. So I figured that this was a good compromise where we don't have to compromise our values, but we can get the message across. So without further ado, we're going to bring in one of our best listeners and most engaged followers, Mr. Jacob, to talk about an issue that he would like to talk to you all about. Jacob, thanks for joining the Rage and Review podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well, fellas. How about y'all?
Doing good. Thanks for joining. I understand that you have a PSA for the folks.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first, I appreciate y'all having me on. I'll give the disclaimer ahead of time. I'm not affiliated with Rage and Review. As Josh said, I'm an avid listener. I like interacting with the post game spaces for football. I'm also not a member of the Rebounders Club booster group.
Social club.
Right. And I'm not affiliated with the athletics department. I'm just a big UL men's basketball fan.
There you go. So we got all the disclaimers out of the way. So go ahead, Jake.
Yeah.
You're good.
So yeah, little background on me. Throughout undergrad, I worked as a student manager for the team. So I'm really invested with the sport. I love it. And we got a big game coming up on Thursday against Louisiana Tech. And if you're a Raging Cajuns fan, I know you really dislike Louisiana Tech. So yeah, big game starts at tip off at 7. I saw some student tweets going around that they're going to be doing a student tailgate. I'm going to try to find out more information on how to possibly start a non-student tailgate for those basketball games, just to, improve the culture, like take it one step forward. Going into the future, we could establish something right now that 5, 10, 15 years down the line still goes on when all these players and coaches or whoever have gone past. Sunbelt basketball looks pretty strong this year. If y'all have been paying attention across the league, we've had some major upsets. People call them upsets, but for people who follow Sunbelt basketball, you know how strong the teams are in our conference. And hopefully we're getting closer and closer to being a 2-bid league. Some notable victories over the past 2 days. Troy beat Florida State yesterday. So that was a pretty good win for the belt. And today, App State beat Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky. Another big win a couple days ago was Southern Miss going on the road as a 13.5-point dog and beating Vanderbilt in Nashville 60-48. So we've got some strong teams, as we get closer and closer to conference schedule. Although we did get picked first preseason, the other coaches have a lot of respect for our team going into this season, know that each team in the Sun Belt is going to be a tough game every week. So If you're interested in seeing good basketball, I encourage you to come to the game. We got some new coaches on the bench this year. Donovan Cates came from the University of Alabama after working under Nate Oates, and Casey Perrin recently. He's worked with Chris Beard at Texas Tech and over to the University of Texas. So we got 2 new coaches on the bench this year. Obviously, our players, I think one of the biggest reasons we were picked to finish first in the league is we had the least amount of transfers out of our program, right? Our biggest loss was Theo Akuba going to Ole Miss, but for the most part, we've returned 5 out of our 6 top scorers coming into this season, and we picked up a good get. I know a bad loss last year was losing to Jackson State at home, but we took their best player, who has played awesome so far. He scored a 20-point game. He was our Asheville tournament MVP.
Who's
He's
that,
a
Jacob? Is
very
that Lewis?
aggressive rebounder. For
that
someone
Lewis?
who was around the team when Bryce Washington was there, I'm not comparing him to Bryce Washington or saying he's as good, but this dude is an aggressive rebounder, probably the most aggressive offensive and defensive rebounder I've seen since Bryce was on the team. But yeah, so I know there's about 10 people watching the stream right now. I know a lot of the listeners listen to it in podcast form or over YouTube listening to it. Take this as your invitation to come out on Thursday and watch the team. Obviously, everyone's entitled to their opinion, however it may be towards men's basketball or whoever, whenever, whatever. Come out and support the Cajuns. As we all say, like I've heard it time and time again, we support UL athletics, whether we're in the dumps or at the high. Let's go out and support our boys. That's all I got. I welcome any questions. And I'll
I got
answer
questions
them to the best of my ability. But
I got questions. You piqued my interest. Which, by the way, I want to set something straight.
Sure.
We average about 1,500 consumptions per episode.
That's all. Yeah. You're good. I wasn't taking a shot or anything. I was just
everybody
looking.
know. We do okay. But no. So the guy that you were talking about from Jackson State, is that Lewis?
Yeah, Terrence Lewis. Yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't aware about that transfer. So that's interesting. I keep seeing his name pop up. So good to know where he came from. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think if he didn't come from Jackson State, we're his 5th stop. So he played at 2 different JUCOs. He played at Jackson State and North Texas. I think he went North Texas, Jackson State, and he's a grad transfer and came here. We recruited him before he chose North Texas, and then he came to UL this season, and he's played really well so far this season.
Yeah, it sounds like it. 2 questions that I have about the tailgate thing you mentioned. Number 1, you said there's a student tailgate that's cropping up. First question is, where is it? Second question is, the tailgate that you're wanting to start, ideally, where do you think that's going to take place?
Answering the first question, I believe I saw the tweet saying it would be on the Theta Xi lot on Fraternity Row, which is the open space between 2 fraternity houses, right when you pull into the Fraternity Row parking lot. I'm interested to see how that works out, but that was the tweet that I saw cropping up on Twitter. And to answer your second question, I have no clue. My entire men's basketball experience has been from on or behind the bench. So this is going to be like my first real season attending games as a fan.
Oh, that's cool.
So I don't know. I'm eager to figure it out.
What about this? So what time do you think you'll get out there? What is it going to look like? Obviously for football, you get there on a Saturday morning, you tailgate until 4 or 6 or whatever. What do you envision this looking like for basketball? Say early afternoon, also. Well, I'll ask the question later. But what does it look like to you?
Sure. I mean, obviously, basketball is pretty unique in its scheduling and non-conference. You have games happening on different nights throughout the week. But when you start fleshing out into conference season, the team usually has games on Thursdays and Saturdays. I guess Thursday night games would be pretty difficult to do tailgates as we know them to traditionally be. However, I know the students are going to try theirs this upcoming Thursday. But I would assume it would happen somewhere near the underpass or right outside the underpass. I know that they've tried encouraging people to go into the table room before games. The new bar Cajun Dome establishment.
That was the
thingy.
question that I had. Why the hell aren't we utilizing that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of going into it blind. As I said before, this is going to be like my first real season attending it as a fan. So I'm eager to find out how things kind of operate. I went to the Centenary game at home, our season opener, and it was pretty interesting how they had the women's game before. It was a doubleheader, but the women's game was free to attend. So when that game concluded, they had to clear the arena of all of the fans, while all the men's, like the people wanting to go to the men's game, had to wait outside until the entire arena was cleared. And then they had like 2 doors open with scanners, having all the people waiting, walk in. I think tip-off kind of got pushed back to like 7:40 or 6:40 instead of 6:30, or 7:40 instead of 7:30, whatever, like 10, 15 minutes pushed back. But I don't know. I'm eager to kind of get a feel for it and see what works out, and try to get more people around there. You know, I think of it this way: like, you're building culture. The more people in there, the better the atmosphere. You know, when you think about like Nebraska football, I know this is a weird example, but like Nebraska football has not been good the past 5, 6, 10 years, right? But they have the longest sellout streak in the country. That's a lot of eyes for accountability, but also a lot of support for those players and that team. It encourages people to come, both as fans, but also like prospects. When they come in, they want to be there, or even future whatever, you know, coming to school. So I think building the culture today could do a lot going forward in the future.
You're right. Fellas, questions for Jake?
Man, I just want to first thank you for, coming out and supporting the program and trying to make a difference and trying to get things organically done. So that's really my message. There's so much that has caught on in different sports that are organic, that weren't pushed by the administration, that people came up with themselves. So I appreciate that. And thank you for taking a stand and trying to get something going. I've done that. I've been in your position where I try to get things going, and they worked. And sometimes it just takes one person to make a difference. So I appreciate it.
Hey man, I'm just trying to get people to the game on Thursday. I'm trying to beat Tech. It's as simple as that. I'm inviting you to the game.
Yeah, I look, we could play tiddlywinks with Tech, and I'd want to crush them. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't take much for me to want to beat them at anything.
Yeah, I was going to say rock, paper, scissors, badminton, tic-tac-toe. I don't care. I just want to beat them, like you said. No, Jacob, I'll reiterate what Nick said. To start off this organic event that you're doing with tailgating, I think is huge. I think that's something that when most schools a lot of times have rich traditions, it starts off organically. You don't really have it forced on the fans. It's just a bunch of fans getting together and just doing something that kind of reflects their love for a particular team, a particular program, and it usually grows into something big. I hope what you're doing Thursday night can do the same. But don't let it, I'll say this as somebody who has seen us in the past try, don't get discouraged if it's a small, turnout in the beginning, right? You got to keep persisting. That's one thing I will ask of you if you want to get this tradition really going. We talked about it here at Rage and Review. When we started out, we were getting how many, Josh? Maybe
7,000. What are you talking about?
50.
No, nobody cared. Nobody wanted to hear what we had to say. Nobody cared.
50 listens, and we just,
it only took us 3 freaking years.
What you mean, Josh? I still don't care what you have to say.
I know, but at least more people don't care. They care without caring.
Right. But in all seriousness, though, Jacob, I mean, this could be something that could be very special. So just keep being persistent on it. Be consistent. You obviously have a passion for the program. You have a passion for the Cajuns. And that's what makes our fans so unique, is when you bring that passion and you indulge that with our Cajun culture, it becomes something very special, especially something unique as well. So kudos to you for doing that, and hope this turns into something special and in the end of the day.
Well, listen, hey, it's not all on me. I'd love for this to be like a prime example of, and this is kind of like my statement of encouragement to the students to take ownership in something. We've seen, I know from my personal experience, having graduated from the school in 2019, I remember when our tailgates got moved from the trees lining the stadium to across the street from Bourgeois, where it takes you 20 minutes to walk to the stadium now, right? So like I really loved seeing that tweet from whatever student runs that Barstool Raging Cajuns account. That really gave me a lot of hope. And like, maybe I can assist whoever's running that, and bringing that and letting them kind of lead the charge and take ownership of something, that they can have a say in, like, what's going on and go into the future.
So, by the way, before I turn it over to you, Josh, I just want to say, so I worked with the baseball program for, God, I'm going to age myself, like 20 years, like from Robe's third year till 2019. And I went back in like 2021 for my first time ever not being a part of the program, watching the game. It's weird as hell. You're going to want to drink a lot because otherwise you're going to cry. So just prepare yourself. It is going to be seriously weird and sentimental and all that stuff.
Hey man, I'm looking for, I love basketball. So we'll see what happens. You know, I went to grad school at KU and they're like the best at basketball. So
allegedly,
we'll see if they beat Duke.
Before we let you go, here's the thing. Need to know what time you're going to be set up and where.
Listen, I don't know what, maybe we got some wires crossed. I'm not starting the tailgate this week. I'm trying to figure out what's going down with the students on Thursday. And I'm going to try to let them lead the charge. I really want to like highlight them. You know, I know a lot of times we talk about in football, you know, we've heard stories of like students getting thrown out of games and stuff like that. I'd love to get them involved in something and have that stake of ownership in a sport. And maybe they can do it through this. So I'll probably try to walk out there on Thursday around, 6:20 and see how their tailgate is going, and figure out if I have any more contacts or any sway to try to get them closer to the dome and make it something a little more special going into the future.
Well, let us know if we can help. We will. It's not a conflict of interest on the outside of the dome, so I'm happy to help. I was going to say, if you're going to set up like at 5, I'll walk over there with a case of beer and we can hang out before the game.
Hey man,
but I got crossed. I thought you were setting up at 10.
I'll check out the schedule and I'll let you know.
Let me know. I'll go out there and extend an olive branch. We can do some handshaking and baby kissing, and then we can have a tent or maybe some food. I don't know. I can walk there. It takes me 10 minutes. So
cool. And then I just guide you into the game and you watch it with me.
It's gonna be tough. I don't even know if they'll let me in there, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might be on the hit list. Like, nope, blocked.
Bob himself will be like, hang on a second, timeout. He can't come in here. Anyway, Jacob, thank you for taking a couple minutes to visit with us, man. What you're doing is awesome. You're a great fan. Appreciate your support as a follower of Rage and Review. And if you want to come on and be like our mole, basketball mole, you can do that. We'll hire you.
We'll find a different noun.
Our liaison. How's that? You'll be our liaison.
Yeah. That's just trying to highlight, hey, these players work hard. I know some of them personally. They're really great guys. And I know they would love to have more and more people out there. I know at our first game for Seminary, we had over 400 students show up to that first game. And that was on a Monday night that the Saints played. So hoping to see a good crowd on Thursday. Yeah, hope to see y'all there. Y'all as in the listeners, not you, Josh.
Understandable. All right, everybody. Jacob, our new correspondent for men's basketball. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate you, brother.
Have a good one, fellas.
All right, boys. Basketball. We got a game on Thursday. People should go. Anyway, Jerry.
Yes.
Man, I tell you what.
Man, I tell you what. Last Thursday night, the Cajuns finished out their home slate against Georgia Southern with a 36-17 victory, extending their record to 5-5, back to 500, with one more conference game to go, not this week, but the next week against Texas State. But this week is a little bit of a wrench in the conference schedule as the Cajuns travel to Tallahassee for their first ever meeting against the Florida State Seminoles. And as you know, Florida State has beaten, as we call them, the team across the base in the first week. And they're on a 3-game win streak with some dominant scores against their ACC opponents. But let's look at a little bit of history. If you look at some of these road games that the Cajuns have played against Power 5 competition, even though most games have been pretty much blowouts, unfortunately, there have been a few games that have been pretty close that could have put the program on the map. For example, 1986, going to Oxford to play Ole Miss. Cajuns lose a close one, 21-20. Or how about 1989, when the Cajuns traveled to Birmingham to play the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide to a score of 24-17. Fast forward to 1992, traveling to Auburn, Alabama to face the Auburn Tigers and blowing a late game lead to lose 25-24. Or how about the 2012 game against the number 6 Florida Gators, where our hearts were ripped out on the very last play of the game through a block punt and scoop and score by the score of 27-20. All of these games signify that the fact that even though the Cajuns may have been heavy underdogs, they still had a chance to actually pull off the impossible. And of course, let's not forget 2020, when the Cajuns finally got over that hump of all of these close losses to face a nationally ranked Iowa State team by the score of 31-14. A big victory that not only set off the Cajuns program into the expectations and standards of today, but also ignited Billy Napier's career as well into his job that he has now. So what's the point in all of this? Regardless of the spread, regardless of the expectation, regardless of what the prognosticators say about this Florida State-Louisiana matchup, regardless of the inconsistencies and positives that the Cajuns have experienced this season, regardless of what Florida State has done, how about we once again get over that hump this Saturday? At this point, the Cajuns go into Tallahassee with a, I quote, nothing to lose mindset. What have we got to lose? Win the game, you set your program back to where it needs to be. Lose the game, you have a chance to redeem yourself against Texas State. So all in all, let's go to Tallahassee with nothing to lose, pull off the impossible, get over the hump of losing those close games that I mentioned over the last few decades, beat the Florida State Seminoles, and ease our way into a bowl game and hopefully a winning season. With that said, guys, whether you're going to Tallahassee or not, cheer loud for the Cajuns. Make sure that Seminole chop isn't loud, drown out the crowd, and accomplish the impossible. Good luck, Cajuns. We'll be pulling for you.
Gonna have plenty of people in that stadium raising hell.
I got my UL chop going. We'll be doing this all game, right?
Love it.
Does that
Shaws.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we do, please hit the subscribe button, like button, share button, comment, share with friends, tell them all about the pod. Bring more people to watch and to support the Cajuns. That's why we do this. Thanks again to Jacob. Thanks again to Perry of the Tomahawk Nation, SB Nation affiliate. It was a good show. Apologize for being late. Wasn't my fault. Shout out to the Rainbow Mermaids on a fantastic soccer season. Fireboys were as good, but they didn't get enough coverage, so we'll do another special on that later. Anyway, let's go to Tallahassee and bring home a W. Good night. Go Cajuns.